you're here watching this show today in 2025, like you have more wealth than you're ever going to know what to do with. But the problem is that there's going to be a lot of people who want to take that from you. It's good to have goals, but at the same time, it's not about how much Bitcoin you have. It's about how much fun you have. But if you have that, if you know what you're doing, if you know what to look for, if you know what questions to ask, you can really use that as a benefit in your life. Instead of watching the price and the news and which company's buying Bitcoin this week, it's like focus on getting more sats and focus on protecting the sats that you have today. You know, the only thing more scarce than Bitcoin today is your time. Think about what it's going to be worth at that time. If you can get like 5,000 sats today, that's going to be the equivalent of $5,000 in the future. And so if you have any amount of sats right now that you're leaving to your family, they're going to be good. People like to see something, they like to have something to chase. But again, it just kind of reminds me of like the fiat system itself, because that's what people do. They try to chase different things, because there's enough people talking about how much Bitcoin you need to get to. But it's like, if you're here now in 2025, you have more than enough Bitcoin. So that's kind of one thing I've been talking about a little bit that people have been agreeing with and really resonating with. And I think it's important because there's enough people talking about how much Bitcoin you need to get to. But it's like, if you're here now in 2025, you have more than enough Bitcoin.
I agree with that. And it's so interesting how we get those targets, and I'm guilty of that. Like I and my team are guilty of that because we just know it works. Like get to 1.9 Bitcoin, get to like 0.25 Bitcoin. Like it's arbitrary, and people are saying, of course, the target changes every day. Of course, it changes because you can make a case for different time frames. You can make a case for different situations. Some people might be fine with expenses of 30,000 a year. Some people might need 200,000 a year. Depends on like where you live and how you live, and those different living situations plus time frames. Like, are we talking 5 years? Are we talking 50 years? Because like 0.1 Bitcoin at some point will be a whole lot of Bitcoin, but probably not next year.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like people really need to think about their age, their lifestyle, and how much income they're bringing in. Because if they're still earning money, then they're going to be able to survive a lot longer than somebody who isn't bringing any income in. And it's like, if you start throwing around numbers, I know it's good for like the getting eyes and stuff, because people like to see something, they like to have something to chase. But again, it just kind of reminds me of like the fiat system itself, because that's what people do. They try to chase different things instead of just adding value. And, you know, Bitcoin, fortunately for us, is the best way to store that value. So to me, it really depends on your age, you know, your lifestyle, what you spend your money on, and how much money you're bringing in. But, you know, the cool thing about Bitcoin is even in the future is like, you're going to have X amount of Bitcoin. There's going to come a day where people kind of look at their Bitcoin wallet, their balance of sats, and it's probably not going to go up much more from there. Because we've been so fortunate so far, you know, being here now. I think it's incredibly early, but it's like you can still get 800 sats for $1. At some point in the future, that $1 is going to buy 8 sats. So it's like the balance won't go up like it is today. And so I feel like if you're not adding value, if you're not constantly replenishing that, it's going to be a problem. So, you know, that's one thing I've been talking about.
That's super interesting. Before we get started with all the topics, maybe I can give you a quick opportunity to introduce yourself also, because maybe there are some people that still don't know you. Maybe they have missed our first episode. So maybe give the people some background of like who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah, this is my second time on the Robin Show, so thanks for having me on again. I was excited for this one. I love talking to you. Had the pleasure of meeting you in Vegas, which was my first ever Bitcoin conference that I went to. And yeah, I'm Jor from 88 Sats Radio. I have a bit of a different show. It's a little bit more philosophy focused. I focus a lot on Bitcoin security stuff in terms of like protecting your sats. It doesn't matter too much how much Bitcoin you have today. It's about how much your family's going to have in 50 years from now. So that's kind of one thing that really fascinated me, because I was thinking through this stuff a lot. I was looking for the best setup, the best products to be using. And I would lay in bed at night and think like, is there any holes in this security setup? Because I understand where this whole thing is going, and you want to make sure that you actually have that Bitcoin in decades from now. And so I'd play through all these different scenarios, and which is a good thing, because I think even, top athletes, they visualize things, right? Whether it's an F1 racer or a downhill ski racer, they've ran that track in their mind thousands of times before they actually step on the track. And so I feel like you have to do the same kind of thing with Bitcoin. You have to visualize all the different things that could happen. Think about your threat models and think about the vulnerabilities in your setup. And so I just kind of like talking about it to, spark something within people. Maybe they miss something. Because I just find like there's so much information out there right now. We live in an information age. It's abundant. You could find anything you want to for free in about 3 seconds now. But the problem is that people don't really know what questions to ask, what prompts to give the AI. So that's kind of the conversations that I usually have, is just like talking through things, and hoping to spark something within somebody that they take some action.
I love that. And I think especially with the information age and where we are, and I think we last time actually touched a little bit on AI, but it's more and more important to just ask the right questions, and then with the answers that you get from all the machines, ask again the right questions based on that, and then formulate slowly a plan according to that. But it's asking questions like a really underrated skill. I feel like it's like this is the whole thing of like, do you get any benefit out of AI, or are you losing out on that? Because if you can also use it in a bad way, I guess. I don't know if you can use it in a bad way. Can you use AI in a bad way?
Sure,
probably,
you could.
Just giving it all the information and not getting anything out.
Yeah. And it probably depends how you define bad too. Like that'd be a subjective for everybody. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be used for a lot of bad things in the future. It probably already is. And, there's a lot of, and that's one of the threats really is, people watching you, this camera watching you all the time. People are getting pretty clever with their schemes. The reality is that if you're here watching this show today in 2025, like you have more wealth than you're ever going to know what to do with. But the problem is that there's going to be a lot of people who want to take that from you. And the cool thing is that if you do it properly, they're going to have a very hard time doing that. It's not like gold where they can break into your house and take it from you. It's not like property, like land, where the government can change and, they decide that maybe we don't want the citizens owning this anymore. It's something that you can take real ownership of. It's the first asset in my mind anyways that actually has the ability to do that. The first asset that you can truly own is Bitcoin. So that's the kind of stuff that I talk through, is like how to get to that spot. Everybody's at a different spot in their journey right now in Bitcoin. There's people who have been here since, the inauguration in January. There's people who have been here for 10 years. But, unless you actually know what you're looking for, you're not going to be able to utilize the tools that we have here now with the AI. But if you have that, if you know what you're doing, if you know what to look for, if you know what questions to ask, you can really use that as a benefit in your life in a lot of areas, but Bitcoin especially. And
I guess with that, physical attacks actually are decreasing. I mean, we always talk about the wrench attack and people coming to the house, and there's those like from the Ledger guy and the France guy, and there's like examples that happen. But I think overall, it's so much easier nowadays to do all those attacks online from the comfort of your like home and like do it protected. So it's really hard to find you. Where if you do it physically, there's a lot of things that can go wrong if you do a physical attack. Just like thinking from the attacker's point of view, why would you go through the hustle of going for a physical attack when you can do it all online, and the chances of getting something and getting away with it is like, I don't want to put any ideas in anymore, but it's just way higher. I haven't seen any statistics, but I would guess that physical attacks in general are actually going down just because there's no more. It's harder to get actual value out of like stealing someone in a home. Like I don't even have my Bitcoin at home. So like if you come here, I can literally give you like I have one small gold bar. It's almost worth nothing that I can give you. So like it's like, okay, shit. Like, you can break into someone's home, get all the risks and then maybe stand with nothing there, because even if you kill them, there's still nothing in the home that you can extract from them.
Well, that's the way to ensure that you're not going to get somebody's Bitcoin if they have it secured properly is to kill them. Like that's the only way that you're not going to get that Bitcoin for sure is if you kill them, which is kind of cool when you think about it that way. It's like it really raises the cost of, crime, of violence. And I think that that's going to have a widespread effect in society because people aren't just going to, it's not going to be worth their time to do it. It's going to be I think a long, challenging road to get there and a very bumpy road. And, I think if you can get through the next 5 to 10 years holding your Bitcoin, you're probably going to be fine, because people who are coming after you, they're going to realize that, like you said, you don't have any Bitcoin at your house right now. That's what everybody should be striving to get to. And, you and I we're on YouTube and stuff, so we're a little bit more public than most people. But again, I'm sure people have had conversations with their friends and their family and their coworkers enough that if somebody was wanting to get some Bitcoin, they would know which house to go to. And so it's like, you need to be thinking about this stuff, like the public facing people are, because it's important. You don't want to be in a situation where the Bitcoin's at your house. I mean, there's a lot of people. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on in Bitcoin is leaving my cold card or my hardware device and my 12 words sitting right beside each other, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the hardware device itself, because that's what has, the PIN code on it. That's what has, the secure elements in it. And then you leave your 12 words sitting right there, where if somebody found it, it doesn't matter what, how secure your hardware device is. They take those 12 words, they put it into a new wallet, and they now have your Bitcoin. So there's just so many things like that when people are getting into Bitcoin. There's so much to learn about the network itself, about UTXOs, about security, and it's very overwhelming for people. And I've just been doing my best to hammer it into people of how important this is right now, instead of watching the price and the news and which company's buying Bitcoin this week. It's like, focus on getting more sats and focus on protecting the sats that you have today.
That's as a whole game. And then coming back to the thing that we just discussed, like right in the beginning, the first minute, where we always have these videos of like get to 0.1, get to 1 Bitcoin, get to 1.9. But maybe the more important topic would be like, keep your 0.1 Bitcoin, keep your 0.25 Bitcoin, keep whatever you have accumulated, like keep that. Like make sure if you have any amount of Bitcoin, you probably will be fine, unless you only put like 1% of portfolio in there and it's like a very small stack. It's like, yeah, probably you should get more of them, but yeah, it's like keeping them and securing them is a more important topic. But at the same time, nobody wants to listen to that. Like everyone wants to listen to like what I can buy with 0.1 Bitcoin, and nobody wants to listen to how to actually keep those Bitcoin. You as content creator have probably gone through the same discovery.
Yeah. And when you're talking about security and stuff like that, it is boring for people. It's a reality. But I think if you kind of change the angle and say, the only thing more scarce than Bitcoin today is your time. And I just feel like when people are so obsessed and so focused on getting to a certain goal in Bitcoin, they kind of put their life aside and their friends and their family and, just being outside, and just so focused on, on their phone, trying to get sats and, posting on Nostr. It's like, it's good to have goals, but at the same time, it's not about how much Bitcoin you have. It's about how much fun you have. That's the point of life, I think. And so when you talk through that and you think through that, it's like, yeah, if you fast forward here, if you look out 20, 25 years right now, because most people, I think, in Bitcoin today, they'll tell you that they're doing it for their family. They're doing it for the generations to come. They're looking at this like, land back when people first started settling here. It's the same kind of thing. So if you play it out and you think that one day $1 is going to equal 1 sat, which means that Bitcoin's going to be, $100 million in fiat price. It's like, think about what it's going to be worth at that time. If you can get like 5,000 sats today, that's going to be the equivalent of $5,000 in the future. And so if you have any amount of sats right now that you're leaving to your family, they're going to be good. right? People are still thinking in terms of like what Bitcoin's worth today. They're not really thinking about what it's going to be worth when they actually go to pass it down to their kids and their kids. Like, it's going to be crazy amounts of wealth. So it's like, yes, it's good to have goals. Yes, you should be doing as much as you can to, get more and add as much value as you can to the world. But it's not everything. You have to enjoy yourself. You have to look after yourself, take care of your health, and just have fun, and enjoy the ride. That's kind of one thing that I've been focused on, is just reminding people that, just enjoy it, smile, you're okay. Bitcoin it gives hope to a lot of people. And I think that if you can kind of focus on that aspect and really adding value, that's one thing I've noticed about the Bitcoin community, is like, that's the core principle in life, is add value to the world and you're going to get some back in return. There's no shortcuts, there's no games to play. It's just reality. Provide something that people want and they'll pay you for it. And you can convert that into Bitcoin and then you save it there. And that's kind of the whole game here for me.
Yeah, it's like stacking, like having fun, providing value, and then saving the thing that comes on top of the line into Bitcoin. There's one aspect that I like a little bit about that goal setting of like getting to 1 Bitcoin, is that someone that might be disencouraged from the fiat system of like not being able to save, and kind of that's why he's kind of sick of providing value and like kind of stacking back and like maybe scaling back a little bit, and getting to 1 Bitcoin or getting to 0.1, whatever the target is, might motivate someone and have fun again into proof of work. Like putting like an actual thing in there might actually trigger in someone like, I can save a few Satoshis each week, and those Satoshis actually get more purchasing power. So not only do I get something from my work, but if I save in the right thing, I get more of that. So almost like the reverse of what fiat does to you. It motivates to provide value and provide proof of work. So I think that's if you look at the most positive angle of like get to 1 Bitcoin, I think that's it, like motivating someone to do something with their life. But it also, at the same time, and I want to show you a picture, I think you will love that picture. It can actually also be the whole normal fiat rat race that you then into that, just with not saving dollars, but saving Bitcoin. And it was super popular. I posted that like in May, like 2 months ago, something like that. And it got like crazy amount of views, like almost 200,000 views. So people really resonated with that. And you see, for the few people that listen only and don't watch, there's a guy chasing after Bitcoin. Then the second picture is like a guy chasing after some Bitcoin, and he also has some Bitcoin. And then it's like he stands on the cliff with all the Bitcoin. But the life ends. So, and then there's like the written thing, dying rich, living poor. And I think that's what you're kind of concluding towards, where, yeah, it's important to have a goal, but also it's important to have fun and use your Bitcoin. And I wrote here, make sure you use your Bitcoin to get more life and not giving more life to Bitcoin.
Yep. I love that. And I think it was Jack Mallers who gave a speech in Vegas. He was talking about the same kind of thing, the miser with his gold. And, if it's just buried, people can go listen to that. I'm not going to tell the whole story here, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, you might as well just have anything there. If you're not going to do anything with it, it could be anything, right? It could be gold. It could be a rock. It could be whatever. You actually have to use it. And, I think that's the one thing that a lot of people are getting wrong right now, is that they look at Bitcoin as like an investment that they're going to, buy X amount and then retire in a couple years, versus just, it's a savings account right now, right? It's a savings account right now. In the future, we're going to be able to buy and sell things with it as a medium of exchange. And then eventually it's going to reprice the whole world. We're kind of living through that. We're fortunate enough to get to live through that whole process there. But it's true. Like, you have to be willing to spend some Bitcoin. And I do like the fact that, like you said there, it gives somebody, the ability to get to 1 Bitcoin or even to 0.1 of a Bitcoin. That's the thing that I like most about it, is like, people are now kind of talking in terms of sats instead of how many Bitcoin you need. It's how many sats you need. And I think that's much more realistic for people. And it's encouraging, I think, the fact that, even if you don't have a lot, if you start today and you just keep doing it consistently, then you're actually going to have a pretty big stack by the end of it. And even when people say, I'm going to buy Bitcoin as much as I can for the next 5 years, and then I'm going to, stop. It's like, stop what? Then you're just going to go back and start saving in fiat again? I doubt it. 5 years from now, you're going to have 10 times the conviction that you have today. So it's just like, there's no real timelines. There's no goals. It's just, again, get as much as you can. Understand where we are right now in this whole crazy transition that we're living through, and, just enjoy it.
Yeah. And there is, I can see where people are coming from, because there might be like an accumulation phase where maybe early in the life you want to like dig in a little bit harder and like accumulate, so you have more to spend when you get kids, like you're married, all those. Like, I don't like, you can do whatever you want. Like, you don't have to have the accumulation phase or the spending phase or whatever. I personally think like I always want to do something. It's also interesting. How do you actually define retirement? It's one of the other very popular topics in Bitcoin, retire on Bitcoin. How do you define retirement?
Well, that's exactly it. It's like retirement, I think, it's a scam. It's like the retirement that we know is people went to work for 40 years. Most people hated what they did for those 40 years. And then they got to retire, and they got a nice fixed income that the government and their employer and their retirement fund subsidizes. And they can travel for a few years. And then it's like, then what? So you just spent the best years of your life doing something that you hated so that you can retire and sit on the beach for a while. It's just like, I'm not into that. And that, even before Bitcoin, one of the things that changed my mind about the whole work, environment and retirement was actually Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And that's his whole thing. It's like, you shouldn't be so focused on retirement. You should be taking mini retirements throughout your life and changing things and changing what you do. And so retirement to me, I doubt that I'll ever retire. I feel kind of retired right now in a way, in the sense that I can do whatever I want with my days. And I think that that's the real thing that people should be chasing, in my opinion anyways. That's what I was trying to do. And I think that that's the most fulfilling, is when you can find something, a specific skill that you have, and combine those and add value to the world and actually enjoy it. And then there is no retirement. I feel like retirement's quitting something you hate. Whereas if you just do things that you love doing, it's like, what, are you going to stop doing that? There's lots of definitions for it, but that's kind of how I think about it anyways.
I love that, because I also consider myself retired, even though if I stop working today completely, I'd probably run out of Bitcoin. Like, yeah. I don't know.
Me too.
But I'd probably run out of Bitcoin at some point, especially because I'm young, especially because I want to also have a nice life. But retirement for me, and I've told that story. Sorry if some people heard it too many times already. But it's important to make the point. It's when I started this podcast, I had no fixed income. Like, I had no like big sponsor that like completely just supported me. In fact, the only sponsor that I had at that time left me 2 months later. So I started this whole thing and was like, okay, I have one sponsor that said like, okay, let's try it out for 2 months. After that, he left and let's see where it goes. And I was like, okay, I will just try it out. I can live for a few months off my Bitcoin if I really have to. I'm not homeless tomorrow. And at that point, I was super scared. I cried times. Like, it was horrible to take that decision. But once I took the decision, it was just pure bliss. It was just amazing. Like, once I took the decision, I literally remembered. I told my boss that, and we finally settled on like, okay, this is where I completely go out of the company. And it was like within 3 weeks. But this was like where I signed the contract of like, okay, I'm not going to sue you. We're going to in next 3 weeks, we're going to do this, like very normal. Like, I love the company. So like, it was a very mutual thing. And it was like a very nice thing also. They even threw a party for me and all those things. And I remember going on that Friday at like noon down to the garage to the car and sitting in there. And just like, oh shit, like I was turning up the music. I was just so happy. I was so fulfilled. Like I was in traffic. Everyone was like shouting at each other, like pumping their horns and all those things. And I'm like such a big smile in my car. And ever since then, like I'm like obviously it's hard to have a daily podcast, and there's a lot of challenges, and it's just sometimes you want to kill yourself because it's so hard. But most of the time it's so joyful. You provide value and you do exactly what you really want to do. And so I define myself as retired because I no longer do what someone else tells me to do. I actually chase what I want to do, and I try to figure out how I can provide value for others with that. Because you can do what you want, what you love to do, and if you just do that, you probably don't provide value for others. But if you do what you love and provide value for others, then all of a sudden you have a profitable business that you can live off, and you're retired. Like that's the whole magic thing. And yeah, I don't know what my point was, but I just want to throw it in there because that's the whole game of like, that's actual retirement for me.
Yeah, I mean, me and you kind of had the same answer there in the sense that we are retired, even though I'm probably working, I don't know, about 2x as much as I was when I was employed. But like it never really shuts off, I think, for me. It's like, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know what it is, but you know, when you have a show like this, when you have the responsibility of showing up every day and adding value, not just sitting here and wasting people's time, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And so it's like, for me, there's very few times throughout the day where I'm not thinking about business stuff in terms of like new ideas or listening to a podcast. Some people might not call that work, but it is work. It's me growing my skills and becoming more knowledgeable so I can be a better help to people who are interested in it, right? And that's, you know, the one thing that I've realized lately since the first day I started my podcast, or my channel, I guess I should say, versus today, is like when I first started it, I thought I was going to be doing local stuff. You know, it'd be my friends showing up to watch. It'd be my family showing up to watch the show. I don't think anybody does. Nobody that I know, unless they just watch like kind of lurking. But it's like, it's people around the world. And I think that Bitcoiners, one of the most common questions I get asked is like, how do I orange pill my friends and family? And to me, it's just such a waste of time to try to shove Bitcoin down anybody's throat. You have to focus on the people. If you are somebody who wants to help and help grow this network and, you know, be part of the change here, focus on the people that actually want to learn. And you and I both know that there's a lot of people around the world who do want to learn about this and who are interested in it. And so that's who we can focus our time and energy on. It's not the people who are, you know, still 100% entrenched in the fiat system, just ignoring Bitcoin. They're going to arrive here when they need to, essentially, and they haven't had the need yet. So focus on the people who actually want to learn. And I think that time and energy is much better spent that way. And the cool thing about that, the realization from that, was that we're in a different kind of world now. You know, it's not so much about helping. You should have a local focus and be supporting people in your local area. But like, you can do any specific skills that you have now, you can share with the world. That's the one thing that the internet did. And that's the one thing that Bitcoin's doing, is that I can help anybody. And it's what I do all week, is I help people from different parts of the world who want to learn about Bitcoin, who want to secure their Bitcoin. So people just think too small, I think. They don't understand what's happening here in cyberspace, the whole economy happening in cyberspace between the internet and Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want now. And you can live wherever you want to now. And we're there. You know, it's not something that's coming in the future. That's a reality today, which is pretty badass.
I fully agree. And you're still living in the same place that you started as, like,
yeah.
Okay, like, because I also I always dreamed to go somewhere else, and now I'm able, and I'm like, no, I actually like it here.
Yeah,
weirdly enough.
And the cool thing is, like, that's what I think about Bitcoiners looking out a couple decades here, is like, Bitcoiners are going to have options. I think that we are moving into an age of abundance in terms of information, in terms of wealth, in terms of everything. You know, robots are going to be able to create more robots. That's a world of abundance when, you know, you can do it for very cheaply, and it happens. So I think that everybody's going to have, you know, a better life. Bitcoin's going to improve everybody's lives around the world, not just in the West, not just in certain parts of the world. It's going to have an impact, a positive impact on everybody. But the one thing that people are going to have if you're in Bitcoin today is you're going to have a lot of options. And so I agree with you. We're going to be able to live wherever you want to. There's going to be less constraints around like where people actually live now. And one of the examples that I gave recently is like, if you think about a small town who had maybe a big industry that came in there and like blew up the town, like let's say a factory, or in this case, there's a big hog manufacturing plant where they make bacon. And so there's a lot of people when this plant moved into town, the town doubled in size. And so they put up all this new real estate. They had a bunch of demand coming into their town. The economy was booming. But like at some point, robots are going to replace the humans on that, factory line, or the ones cutting up sorry, I don't mean to be graphic here, but, cutting the meat. And so what happens then? There's going to be a bunch of empty houses in that town. And the whole world, I think, between AI and the internet and Bitcoin, it's going to change the way that everything is. It's not just cities. It's not just small towns. It's literally everything. And so if you start playing these things out in your head, you can almost anticipate what's going to happen. And I think that's, the people who are here today, I think that everybody in Bitcoin, who I would call a Bitcoiner, because there's a difference between somebody who owns Bitcoin, holds Bitcoin in a wallet, and somebody who understands Bitcoin. But the people who understand Bitcoin today, I see them as visionaries, because you have to be willing to see into the future. You have to be willing to delay your gratification a little bit for a better future. And you have to have the vision of that. So I think that, the one benefit that Bitcoiners have is they can see things. They can anticipate what's coming. They can kind of skate to where the puck is going. And I think that they're going to be at such an advantage, both economically with the Bitcoin that they hold, plus the skills that they have and the vision that they have to kind of get ahead of things before that happens. So it's pretty exciting. It's exciting to be able to talk to people who kind of are on the same frequency as you. And it's exciting to be able to collaborate and build with people who see the same future as you. Things work a lot better when people are moving in the same direction versus like, butting heads and fighting against each other and trying to compete with each other. So it's really cool. It's playing out. It's cool to be at the forefront of it. And I just think that people should appreciate a little bit, how much their Bitcoin is going to be worth, but also how much the skills they have today, the skills that they're growing today are going to be worth in the next couple of years.
And I've seen your last, I think, live stream. It was not video, where we talked about the next 4 to 8 years, I think it was. And you kind of made that argument that you see actually a bigger bull run coming than it was till now, which goes a little bit against what other people saying with like diminishing returns and the power laws and all those things. Why do you think so?
I mean, you just take a look at where we are right now. Like you can look data-wise, you can see exactly where we are on the adoption curve. And so when you think about it like that, like we've been in this, Bitcoin's been around for 16 years and everybody knows like the classic S curve there. And again, if you think about who's here, how many people are actually not in Bitcoin, but understand Bitcoin, it's a very small amount of people. And so to me, that first part of the S curve there, the flat part, that's still where we are, which means that the steep part is still yet to come. And so to me, it's pretty obvious that Bitcoin right now is a $2 trillion market cap. And I think that it's going to be, 10, 20, 30x that. And it's not going to take as long as people think. Once people realize how broken the money is, and it's happening, I see it every day in front of me here. People are understanding how broken the current system is, and they're looking for an escape. And I think that a lot of people first start in like precious metals, gold and silver. That's what I did. That was my path. You realize that the money's broken, you find a harder money, which is usually gold and silver. And then eventually, once you're in that algorithm, I guess you could say, that's when you get led down the path of Bitcoin. And I think that as more and more people start buying Bitcoin, start understanding Bitcoin, while we can't really change the supply, we can't create more of it to meet that demand. That's when things really go parabolic. And so we're going to move from a $2 trillion industry, I guess in fiat terms, to, 100 trillion or 200 trillion. And there's really no ceiling on that. That's the crazy part. So the move that we've made so far, I think when we look back is going to be laughable. And I do think that the next 4 to 8 years is going to be the big boom, because a lot of capital still has to flow from the bond market and the real estate market. And people have to understand, how illusionary the stock market is for the most part. So all that capital still has to come. We're just, this game hasn't even started yet, in my opinion.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from CoinVigilante represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing CoinVigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. I like that. And it's also what I feel like. And then with the diminishing returns, I don't buy it because money is a lot about trust. And if trust is lost, things can move very quickly. And if trust is gained, things can move really quickly. And both kind of play into Bitcoin, where you have an exponential growth, you have trust growth, and you have just like all the buckets already open. So you have already the bond market a little bit open. You have the real estate market a little bit open. You have all the pipes towards Bitcoin already open. And now it's more about seeing that capital actually flow towards Bitcoin, because 2 trillion is nothing. I think the fixed income market is alone is like 300 trillion, which is 150x more than Bitcoin.
Exactly.
And then there's like the real estate market, the equity market. Gold is comparatively small against all the other markets, but still it's like, I don't know, 10x from Bitcoin, like 15x, something like that, which is fascinating also. So we are so freaking small, and if anyone thinks that we are not early, just go out there and ask 100 people what difficulty adjustment is.
Yeah, exactly. Go ask 100 people if they'd rather have one Bitcoin or Taylor Swift tickets. Like, there's those videos that circulate, but it's like, that's the reality. You know, it's like people are still so disconnected from what's happening here. It's laughable. It's sad. And, you know, that's the one thing I think that you and I both have in common is like, we're trying to reach as many people as we can here. We're trying to reach as many average people as we can here. We're not sitting here in a suit and tie and tailoring to the millionaires of the world. We're looking at the average person and saying, you know what, this is your one chance. This is your family's one chance in human history to actually make a dent, and it's on you. So you're either going to be remembered as a legend or an idiot, or a dipshit, as I like to say on my channel. And that's what's going to happen, you know, in several years from now, or several decades from now, people are going to look back and say, you know, grandpa or grandma, why didn't you get more? Why weren't you doing more? It was so obvious. And it is now. And that's kind of the whole thing to me, is like, between people, between financial advisors, everybody right now. It's a year and a half ago, I think that people had the right to be a little bit skeptical around Bitcoin, to look at it as like a risky thing that could potentially fail. But like in January 2024, when Larry Fink and the crew showed up, it was game over. Like at that point, you could even see it months leading up to that. Like I look back at my channel, and I was making videos in like late 2023 talking about how it's very obvious that Wall Street's coming here. At some point, they're going to announce that they're buying Bitcoin, and things are never going to be the same from there. And that's exactly what played out. January 2024, Larry Fink put his stamp of approval on this thing, and it's just gone up like this. And it hasn't been like the real shoot up yet, but I don't think we're too far away from that. So it's like, you know, it's not going to zero right now. So what's going to happen with it? That's what people really have to ask themselves.
Yeah, and I'm not a chart analyst at all, but
yeah, me either.
I've just noticed that in the past we kind of shot up and crashed down, and now it's more of like almost like a stairs kind of like we are reaching new levels, we're kind of consolidating, we're reaching new levels, kind of consolidating. Now maybe we just like have now a different beast in the game where the corporations and bigger institutions are buying. At the same time, retail is not as as excited about Bitcoin as I wanted to be. And then you kind of have that more consolidating, slow growth. But again, I feel like there is this switching moment when retail is coming back. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't see any retail right now. It's just like driven by corporations. And once retail also gets in there, like it will be crazy.
Yeah. I think it's going to be crazy even without retail, but it's going to be a lot more emotional. I think that's the one thing that's happened since Wall Street showed up, is that a lot of emotion was taken out of the Bitcoin network in terms of when it's running up. You know, people are like, well, yeah, it's probably going to go higher. When it's running down, nobody's really scared anymore. And these Bitcoin, it's true though. Like the Bitcoin aren't moving away from BlackRock. Saylor's not going to sell the Bitcoin anymore. So it's different than people sitting around on Twitter and buying, you know, $1,000 worth. Like this stuff, it's real now. And these coins aren't going to move, which means that the very small amount of supply that Bitcoin originally had is now even much smaller. And so, yes, it's kind of been a steady staircase upwards, but I do think at some point we're going to reach escape velocity and this thing's just going to go berserk. And people are going to look back and say, man, you got into Bitcoin at $100,000. What, like, but to me, if you spent the time that we've spent in Bitcoin, it could not be more clear right now. It could not be more obvious. There's just so many indications of where this thing's going. And I can't even remember the last time I saw something that was actually bad for Bitcoin. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world between government overreach and money printing and people getting, you know, suffering more and more. But in Bitcoin land, like there's been nothing but blue skies for like the last 2 years. It's crazy.
Actually, when you say it like that, there's like no real bad news coming in. There is no huge mining exit we had like in 2021 with China, even though afterwards I can look at that as a positive news and not a negative news. But at the time, maybe you could interpret it as negative news. And there's nothing really, we don't have an FTX anymore. We don't have a Celsius that kind of crashes down. Everything is kind of really nice. I haven't really realized that, but it seems like that. I think about, I literally now think about like what has happened bad to Bitcoin in the last 2 years. And like, I don't know, I cannot think about anything.
Well, and that's, people try to create these different narratives of like, oh, there's going to be a huge burst when all these different public companies don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're holding, and they start selling when the price crashes. It's like, you know, last week we saw here that 80,000 coins came onto the market. And it didn't even flinch. I think it went down like $3,000. 80,000 Bitcoin? Like if you look at anybody other than like Saylor, I think has 600,000 Bitcoin now, but like probably all the public companies combined, if they all sold their Bitcoin, that might not even add up to 80,000 Bitcoin. So it's like what people are fearful about, we just saw play out in real time and nothing even happened. So I just feel like the floor now, the foundation of the demand for Bitcoin, it can't really fall much lower. And if it does, it's not going to be for very long because there's just so much demand for it now. And that's the whole thing for me is like, as the demand increases, as individuals, public companies, private companies, like just the amount of small businesses now are like, oh, maybe I should start holding my reserves in Bitcoin. It just makes sense. So as the demand grows for Bitcoin without changing the supply, that's just why the price will go up forever, simply because there's going to be more and more people, more and more companies, more and more demand chasing the same amount of sats.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that really changed in the last 2 years, and as a hardcore Bitcoiner, you can look at something like that as a negative, but I look at that something that's inevitable and a natural progress of adoption is the paper Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's kind of the ETF concerns. Some also look critical at treasury companies just buying Bitcoin without actually having some product or service behind them. So I think that's the only thing where you can maybe pick a little bit at, but that's just building out the pipes. And I literally just had a podcast like an hour ago before I started with you, where we talked about that. And he is kind of the opinion that those treasury companies right now have a service. They are servicing the locked capital that cannot buy Bitcoin directly, that's still being able to buy Bitcoin. They are building the pipes towards Bitcoin. And this is kind of a service, that is kind of a product that they're offering. So it's not just out of thin air and they're creating nothing. Even though I get the criticism of like, it's fiat games, but it's natural fiat games. And of course this comes like, that's literally the only thing that in my head is like, oh yeah, that you could view as a negative for Bitcoin.
Yep. I agree. But at the same time, it's like, even if, they could create as much paper Bitcoin, because I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of different things happening right now. And the more that Wall Street gets involved, the more institution gets involved, the more banks start getting involved, there's going to be more paper Bitcoin here. But again, it doesn't change. If you had one Bitcoin sitting in a Sparrow wallet or a cold card a year ago, before all the paper Bitcoin games, you still have that one Bitcoin. And it's probably 10x more valuable right now, even though the fiat price isn't reflective of that yet. Like nothing's changed in terms of that Bitcoin actually being worth less in reality, not in fiat illusionary land, but in reality, like that one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. The network's even stronger than it was. There's more demand for it than there was. And so for me, those are all just net positives. As long as you're not the one holding the paper Bitcoin, then you're going to be immune from any paper Bitcoin games. And like you said there, the bond market, I think I heard Saylor say recently that they've built these 4 products now who have been kind of, attempting to build the highways from that bond market into Bitcoin. But even Strategy, the biggest player here, they have, I think, about 5% of the bond market right now. Not they don't have it, but they have the ability to take from about 5% of the bond market because their products still aren't, what's it called, ranked or rated. So that they're not even rated yet. Once Strategy gets rated as like a credit worthy facility, then they're going to allow that whole market to flow in. Right now it's at only about 5% of possibility. I think they've captured like 0.1% of it or something. I don't know the actual numbers there, but it's very small. And there's a lot of capital that still needs to flow into this thing. And so I think that this will continue. But the main thing that people need to understand is that Bitcoin in your own custody is what you really want. That's what's going to make you immune from inflation, paper Bitcoin, everything else. Is just get Bitcoin, put it in self-custody, and sit back.
Yeah, with the products, what is it? Stride, Strive, Strike, and now Stretch.
Yeah,
I literally have no clue about them. Like I have some clue about them, but I don't even want to start explaining them. I recently got into a chat with like just ChatGPT and like trying to figure those things out, and I'm like, anyways, I don't want to participate in them. I just realized like the one thing I know about them, as you just described, those are the pipes from financial city to Bitcoin city, or from fiat city to Bitcoin city, and that's the important thing for me. And you mentioned the privacy thing, or I don't know, for some reason I thought about that. Today, actually, Frank Korver is at the hearings. Did you know about like the samurai wallet deaths? And they're changing now to plead guilty, which will be super interesting to see, like how this whole thing turns out. That's also one thing when I thought about what happened negative to Bitcoin. I mean, that's something that doesn't like, it's not a negative directly to Bitcoin. I don't like, it is something negative, but like not impacting something in price like Celsius or FTX would be. But yeah, that's the only other thing that I could also think about.
Yeah. And I think that's much more, that has a much bigger impact on Bitcoin itself, something like that, where you can throw somebody in jail for, writing code or, releasing open source software. That's a problem. That is a big problem. And I do think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. That's to me, that has a much bigger impact on Bitcoin itself than the paper Bitcoin stuff happening, because that's just the price in fiat terms. Whereas the Bitcoin development, the things being built right now, people need to feel like, I wouldn't say comfortable, but they can't be scared for their lives. They can't be scared that somebody's going to come to their house and put them in jail if they build this piece of software, if they build this application or build this wallet. So that is still a problem. And again, I think that because of what Bitcoin's doing here, it's changing the landscape of everything. Like in my mind right now, strategy is the most powerful entity on the planet. And I know that they don't have the military behind them, but again, we have to watch this whole thing play out still. And so, it's important, I think, to understand where we are, how early we are. And it's important to have people, like certain governments, helping more than they're hurting. But yeah, it's scary. It really is. And, depending on what country you're watching this from, you probably have it different than somebody in a different country in terms of like the ability to self-custody Bitcoin, where you can buy Bitcoin. Even in New York City, it's very difficult for people in New York City to actually buy Bitcoin and take custody of it. And that's like it's right next door to me here. So it hits a little bit harder, but it's like governments still have the ability to make Bitcoiners' lives very difficult. And I think that is probably going to be our biggest challenge going into the next decade here.
Why is it in New York difficult?
They just have different laws and regulations there. It's kind of state by state in the US in terms of their ability, their financial, regulations, I guess you'd call it. The regulators don't like Bitcoin very much in New York. I hope it changes. And I've seen a lot of positive things happen in the last 7 months here in the US, which usually has a bigger impact, a trickle down effect to the rest of the world. But it's still, Bitcoin's whole job here is to separate money from state. And so, of course, state's going to be a little bit pissed off about it.
But you can still buy it. It's just like a KYC thing that holds people back, or like something like that.
You can still buy it, but you can't move it. You can't withdraw it. So if you had like Robinhood or Coinbase, I'm pretty sure anyways, unless something's changed in the last couple of months. But yeah, in New York City, you can basically buy Bitcoin, get the price exposure to Bitcoin. But when you want to cash out, or, in this case, move it to your own wallet, you can't. You have to actually, take fiat. You have to have a taxable event there. So it is tough. And, I'm not so worried about people being able to buy Bitcoin. Obviously, when there's more people able to buy Bitcoin, when the highways expand, it's better for Bitcoin because there's more demand. But my biggest fear is them coming after the developers, the people who are, responsible for securing this network. But the nice thing about Bitcoin, and what makes Bitcoin unique in this sense, is like there is no CEO. There's no company that the government can actually go and subpoena. And so I think that if people keep that in mind, the one thing that you want to do here is get your Bitcoin into your own wallet, because there it cannot be, confiscated for a similar, 6102 attack like the government did. If you have Bitcoin in your own custody and you have that Bitcoin secured properly, then you're almost immune to it all. But it is still bad when they're coming after developers, when they're making it difficult for people to buy Bitcoin. It's still not ideal, but again, I do think that we're moving in the right direction. And just having things like open source products and software, I think that is the one thing for me that gives me a lot of hope. I spent a lot of time on Nostr. I watched different people within Bitcoin, some less known people, and there's a lot of really good, really intelligent people building in Bitcoin. There's a huge brain drain happening from the fiat system and coming over to Bitcoin. And I think when you put those people together and build things with the technology and things that we have at our fingertips now, I do think that over the long term, freedom wins, sovereignty wins. But it's going to be a bumpy ride, I think, on the way there.
Yeah, open source is so important, and open source, just having the. And I literally I did that a few months ago, where I just sat down and was like, hey, let's see the Nostr client. And Primal, for example, is open source. You can download it and try to change it around as you want, and you could possibly host it yourself and just interact with your own client. That's the level of freedom which is just awesome. Like just having the possibilities to see codes, improve it, adapt it for yourself, host it yourself. But we are very far away from that being anywhere near mainstream. Like most apps that we use, I mean, all the apps that I use right now with you are all closed source, are all centrally controlled and like closed sourced. But I do hope that open source eventually wins, and money for some reason is the first main thing where open source wins. Like Bitcoin is open source for the few people that might have not seen that, but like Bitcoin, you can see your code, you can change it around. If you don't like the current setup of Bitcoin, you can fork it and run your own Bitcoin. I don't I don't recommend doing that, because most likely nobody else will buy your coin. But you can do that, and that's a great thing of Bitcoin and open source. And if that comes to everything, like I'm all for it.
I think it will, and you're right. There's a very, very small percentage of people who actually care about it right now, and that might never change. But I do think that there's enough people who care about it where it is actually going to slowly seep into different things, and people are going to become more and more aware of the dangers, of using Google, of using, whatever it may be, Coinbase, all these things. Like, I know there's no open source Bitcoin exchange, but I do think that people are more in tune, especially Bitcoiners. They care about this stuff. They care about their privacy. And I think that that's one thing that I've noticed lately is it's not just the money. It's really a whole mindset shift, a whole perspective shift. You care about different things when you become a Bitcoiner. You care about who's owning your data, who has the ability to shut you down, how many income streams you have coming in, how much value can you provide. It's a whole different. I really feel like this is kind of crazy to say, but I really feel like the person I was before Bitcoin died, and Bitcoin was part of that. The whole 2020 pandemic was part of that. But I'm a completely different person today than I was 5 years ago, like night and day. I feel like every cell in my body has changed. I care about different things. I understand things differently. And it's just, I think that that's going to have a trickle down effect as more and more people spend time in Bitcoin, not learning about money and history, but just like, the way that I think the way the world should be, in terms of you add value to the world, you get value in return. Because the fiat system basically allowed people who weren't adding value to the world to extract value from others who were adding value to the world. And that never works. It works for a little while. Maybe you can kind of cheat nature, but eventually we go back to nature all the time. We have throughout human history. And I think we now have the tools and the ability to make real change today. Again, between the internet, between Bitcoin, between AI, between open source models being built and software being built, I do think that there's enough people who care that we are going to see that change. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be at the whole forefront of things right now. It gets me out of bed like a cannon every morning, because it's like, man, we got a real opportunity here in Bitcoin, in helping people become more private, less reliant on the state, more sovereign. And that's, in my opinion, the whole goal here.
It's an extremely good point of saying that, and there are some Bitcoiners out there that always paint a very negative picture of saying like, oh, the life got so bad. But overall, technology improved our life in the last just like 5 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 50 years, a lot. And if you just look back and seeing like what you can do now, the richest guy like 500 years ago couldn't even do, like not even close to that, like flying around, chatting with friends across the globe and all those cool things like this. We are extremely privileged, extremely rich, and this is something we shouldn't take lightly, and we shouldn't take for granted. And I love the sentence, "What a time to be alive." It really hits home hard.
It's true, and if you think about the people who were here for the last 111 years, so that's kind of where everything starts for me, is like when everything bad started happening slowly to the world, is like back in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve, Jekyll Island, that kind of stuff. That's, if you only got to live during that, that's kind of sad to me. If you only spent your whole life living in fiat world and wars and all that kind of stuff, it's sad. And you never got to see what I think humans are capable of. And I think that if you are born 100 years from now, you won't have the opportunity to be the ones digging for the gold right now, which is where Bitcoiners are. So people don't understand how fortunate they are. Bitcoiners aren't lucky in the sense that, we bought this thing randomly and it went up. Bitcoiners are lucky in the sense that we were born right now and we got to be here for the first 50 years of Bitcoin. And we got to, put our flag in the ground and say, this land in cyberspace, it's mine. And I'm going to do everything I can to protect that for my family for the next 1,000 years.
Who do you think benefits the most from Bitcoin outside of those who adopted the quickest? Like, who do you think will benefit from Bitcoin? Saying like if assuming everyone would adopt it at the same pace and the same acceleration.
I mean, the people who have been on the other end of money printing for the last 111 years, like the Africas of the world, the Thailands of the world. I don't want to start because I'm not, great at that kind of stuff, admittedly. But the people, when you think about the US being the world reserve asset, the US dollar, basically what happens there is that the inflation gets exported to other countries, right? Because if you think about this hoodie that I'm wearing right now, let's say it costs $50. If we were to get this hoodie made here in Canada or the US or somewhere in the Western world, it would probably cost $300 to make. But we export that. We export the inflation and try to, keep costs low enough where people aren't rioting in the streets, essentially. So we've exported that inflation to places like China, Thailand, Cambodia, things like that. And so they've been on the other end of this money printer. We give them fake money and they send us real things back. And that's a problem. And so one thing that Bitcoin changes is nobody has the ability to increase the supply. Nobody has the ability to turn on the money printer or just add more zeros to it. It's like, it's a fair, transparent system, I think, that every single person on this planet is going to benefit from. People here who are, they don't see the same need for it as somebody in, sub-Saharan Africa would, because we have the financial pipes that already built. But that doesn't change the fact that they still can create more. And I think that that's the whole problem here. Every issue that I see in society is stemmed from the fact that people still have the ability to create money. And it's more prevalent in some countries, but I do think that whether you're in the US or Canada or anywhere, Bitcoin is going to improve your life because it takes your government's ability away to devalue your life and steal your time. And that's kind of what we've seen. So I think that everybody's going to benefit from Bitcoin. People think that only Bitcoiners are going to be the beneficiaries here, the people who are here now, but it's not. As this thing plays out over the next 50 years, I really look at it as like a reverse 1971, where in 1971, we saw society slowly deteriorate. And nobody really knew what was happening there. People didn't understand the implications of taking money off the gold standard, but we see it now. It's crystal clear. And I think that we're going to live through the exact same thing in reverse, where people don't really understand what's happening now when you take away the ability for other people to create money, how many things that touches in society. And so we're going to live through that. Most people have no idea what's happening, but they're just going to slowly see their lives get better and better through that transition back into a sound money standard.
I said that multiple times on the podcast. Even the last person adopting Bitcoin will be better off than before Bitcoin. That's totally clear to me.
100%.
We have one question that I asked each and every one of my returning guests, and you have been on a second time already. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
Outside of Bitcoin. Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, since you and I chatted last, I don't want to end things on a sour note here, but my mom got pretty sick. For the last 6 months, she's been pretty sick. She's been in and out of the hospital. She's pretty much been in the hospital for the last 6 months. And so I've been very busy. I've been trying my best to keep up with the channel, with the community, learning as much as I can. But this whole summer has been different for me because I live in a place that I moved to a couple of years ago where my family has a cabin that I spent my childhood growing up here. And, it's great to see my mom's actually improving, which is a very positive thing. She's been getting better and better. But the summer's been a lot different. And I think that, you don't really realize how much you take for granted at the time. But even something as simple as like we would just walk over there, random nights on a Tuesday or Wednesday during the week in the summertime, have supper, sit on the deck, have a beer, chat. You kind of take that for granted when it's just available to you. But this summer they haven't been out here at all because she's been, in and out of the hospital and she has to get back there every night. And so I think that people just need to, again, understand kind of where we started the conversation today is that the goal here isn't to get as much Bitcoin as you can. The goal here is to enjoy yourself as much as you can because we're only here for so long. And, life is very unexpected. And I think that that's the one thing when I think back now, I can come up with a few more things, but, life is very scarce. It's very unexpected. And I think that you just need to appreciate where we are right now, appreciate how lucky you are to be here right now. We're going to go through some stuff, I think, in the next little while that's going to be not so great. But on the other side of that, I think is a really, really different world and a really good world. And so life's unexpected. You have your Bitcoin today, but you have to make sure that if something were to happen to you tomorrow, that your family's going to be able to get that Bitcoin. Otherwise, I see that as a waste, right? Because you spend so much time working for that, learning about Bitcoin, and then things happen like this, like that. You could leave the house today and not come back. And, it sucks because Bitcoiners want to leave a lasting legacy here. That's the whole point of this. And so that's the one thing I hope people take from this conversation is like, understand how precious life is, understand how unexpected it can be, and just don't take anything for granted. Make sure that you have all your ducks in a row in terms of if something were to happen to you tomorrow, that your family's going to have the ability to access that Bitcoin. I really think that that's the biggest thing that Bitcoiners are sleeping on right now is their inheritance stuff and the ability to pass that Bitcoin on to the next generation because they have it in their head or they have it buried in the backyard and they haven't done a proper job of communicating with their family. So that's kind of that's what I've learned is just how scarce time is and how unexpected things can be.
I totally agree with that. And I think it's a big blind spot for people, for Bitcoiners, having to see like, okay, well, like, I mean, there are some Bitcoiners who say like, I want to take my Bitcoin with me in the grave, and I respect that, but like don't have that plan just because you're too lazy to set something up.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Like, don't default to the plan of like, oh, I'll just take it with me to the grave, just because I don't want to go through the hustle and like actually think through that situation of like, oh, like how do I do that? And it's not an easy thing. Like you have to really think about that. But yeah, that's some hard stuff. Like it's, I guess it taught you a lot about time that you maybe first learned a little bit with Bitcoin, but now like with someone in your family that is so close to you, that makes you think usually like about time and how you spend it in all those things.
Yeah. And that's maybe it happened without me even realizing it, but that's one shift that I've seen in myself in the last 6 months is just, one thing I say on my show all the time now is like, be the guy, protect the sats, and enjoy the ride. And to me, be the guy is like, be so skilled at whatever it is that you do that people count on you. They come to you for advice on things because then you're adding value to the world. So be the guy or a girl in this case. Protect the sats because it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you have today. It matters how much Bitcoin your family has in a century from now. And enjoy the ride because the only thing more scarce than Bitcoin is time. And so I don't want people to waste their life with their head down like this on their phone or, work until 11 every night and not sleeping. Like, you have to take care of yourself. You have to invest in yourself, be healthy, because the Bitcoin's not going to do much good for you if you're not around.
100%. And as you know, we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And it's a whole different question. So it does not fit at all to the current theme of the time in life. But that's the nature of that end routine. And the question is, how will governments or political institutions be changed by Bitcoin?
In my opinion, it's already happening. And I think that, again, like I said earlier, is like I see strategy right now as the most powerful entity on the planet. And therefore, I see a big shift from like the way we see government today is it's going to be much more decentralized. It's still going to matter who the mayor of your town is, where your property taxes are going to. That's still going to be very relevant as long as we're around, I think. But the relevance of the federal governments, I think, are going to continue to go down. And they're seeing it right now. You can tell how hard they're pushing back at people. Like, to me, the harder they push people, like in the UK right now, there's a lot of laws about what you can see online and verifying your identity and stuff like that. The harder they push, I think the harder they lose. And that's the case with Bitcoin. There's been several attempts to shut down Bitcoin in different countries. And I think that every time the harder the governments push, the more value that Bitcoin actually has and the stronger this network gets. So I'm a full subscriber of the sovereign individual theory, in the sense that because of the internet now and this whole new economy in cyberspace, that regardless of what they put in place, what laws they put in place, it doesn't matter. People now have the ability to live where they want to work where they want to store their wealth how they want to. These tools are already available, and certain parts, certain percentage of the population is already taking advantage of that, but it's just going to people are just going to keep jumping on the train. And the more people that jump on that train, the harder it's going to be to stop. And I think we've honestly reached that point already. And so I think we're going to move from a very centralized and controlled world into a decentralized and sovereign world. And the earlier you can understand that, the more you can start preparing for it, and the easier that transition is going to be for people.
I 100% agree, and I love that last message to say like the easier, and that's the whole thing, because like orange pilling can be very frustrating, but if we can orange pill more people, it will make the whole thing a little bit more enjoyable and more smooth, the whole process. Really cool. Thank you so much, Jor. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
So the best place people can find me is 88 Sats Radio on YouTube. That's where I do a live show every day. I'm actually a little bit late for it right now. I'll be hopping on there right after this. But we do a live stream every day at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Usually about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We just kind of talk. There's an interactive live chat. People ask questions. We talk about different topics. Again, it's just all about the thought experiments for me and just talking things through, sparking different things in people's brain. And one thing that's kind of launched since you and I chatted last was our Bitcoin Citadel advisory. So we help people with hardware device setup, multi-sig setup, running a node, privacy, advanced privacy, and of course, our main product is a inheritance plan. So we use encryption. We don't hold any keys. You don't have to have any Bitcoin at your house. You can geographically disperse the keys to your Bitcoin. And so we see that as kind of the next big thing in Bitcoin that a lot of people aren't aware of yet. So you can find that at bitcoincitadel.net.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jor, for taking the time. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.